fiscal year 2020. My name is Maya Michelson. I am Deputy Director and live here in Bloomington. Today is Friday, May 3rd, 2019, and we are in the Bloomington City Hall in Bloomington. We welcome applicants who may be part of our audience today and would like to remind them there is to be no direct contact or conversation about the evaluation and disposition of applications before, during, or after the panel meeting. Please be sure that all cell phones are silenced during the meeting today, panelists as well as staff, as well as applicants. At this time, we'd like the panelists to introduce themselves, stating their name, occupation, and where they're from in the state. And Curtis, I'm going to start at your end to introduce yourself.
Great. My name is Curtis Smith. I'm here in Bloomington. I work with Ivy Tech Community College and I direct their Center for Lifelong Learning as all of their engagement, kids camps and programs of that nature.
Hi, my name is Pat Martin. I'm with the City of Bloomington, and I'm the Senior Transportation Planner at the City of Bloomington, and I'm also at Commons.
My name is Pam Hurst. I live in Martinsville, Indiana, representing Morgan County. I'm a local shop owner there and a jeweler, and I'm on the Chamber of Commerce and Martinsville board.
My name is Phil McCown. I live in Nashville, Indiana, in Brown County. Retired software developer and also now a board member for the Brown County Community Foundation. That's are we facilitating, correct? This today.
My name is Madison Miller. I'm the CEO of the Brown County Community Foundation, and our office is in Nashville.
My name is Sarah Carroll. I'm a Assistant Director of Research for the School of Informatics at IU. I'm a PMI certified project management professional, and I've been a show manager for the 4th Street Arts Festival for 5 years.
Great, thank you. Now we'll begin the panel review, and this is how it works. We'll announce the application, we'll review, and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based on the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that the application doesn't need to be recapped. We know you've all read it. Just provide your comments based on the criteria, the review criteria provided. After the first reader is finished, I'll ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or opposing comments. We're not looking for consensus. We just want a full evaluation from the different perspectives panelists are bringing to the table. After the second reader has finished, I will open the discussion to the full panel to offer their perspectives. Remember, in the interest of time, we're only looking for new, additional, or differing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, we will ask that panelist to leave during the application's evaluation. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we ask the panel to update their scores in the online system. It is common for scores to change as a result of the broader discussion amongst the panelists. These scores save automatically in our online system. Are there any questions, panelists, before we get started? Okay, let's begin. Our first application has a conflict of interest. Curtis Smith, if you would step out, we will get started. Our first application is Area 10 Agency on Aging for Monroe and Owen County. The project name is Music and Art Outreach Development for Seniors. And Pat Martin, you are the first reader.
Thank you. This is the 5th year of their application, or they've been doing this program for 5 years, and it's been fun as an evaluator here to look at how the program has grown over the 5 years. I mean, they're offering now, for senior citizens, they're offering beginning line dancing, Zumba, music, non-traditional music, fiber arts, acrylics, and everything else. Social media websites and Facebook. I would like to see them add more in terms of social media contacts, just simply to spread the message out to their audience. Community in terms of artistic quality, I mean, I felt like it was very high for what they're doing. The community engagement, their primary audience are senior citizens over the age of 50, which is just about everybody here. But they're adding intergenerational jam music. In other words, they're looking at people, younger people, to add it in here, which is actually excellent idea to do that. Surveys, I felt like their surveys could be a lot stronger than what they include in the application. The inclusion aspect of that is that they're serving the underserved population and youth, which is good by adding the youth into that. In terms of impact, they're doing individual health and wellness assessments, and they're also doing surveys and skill development. Trying to see here, 178 adults that's a good number for the size of the project itself, plus 25 children. The project management timeline I felt was good, and I felt like their promotional materials were good given the organization that it is. So that's the end of that.
Phil, your second reader.
I concur completely. I think it's a strong application and certainly a worthwhile program. I was glad to see that based on feedback from earlier participants, you're planning to start a rock band and this intergenerational guitar strings. That's good. So they're definitely building the program, as Pat said. There was also a high priority given to different transportation options, which for this group, of course, would be very important. So they seem to be taking everything into account.
Thank you. Any additional comments from panelists on this application? Okay. Hearing none, I'd ask you to finalize your comments and your scores in the online system. And Larry, if you go fetch Curtis. All right, I guess Dan's doing it, so he's being fetched. Okay, our next application organization is Davies in Martin County. The project is West Boggs Music Series. Sarah, you're the first reader on this one.
All right, so, let me put it up here. For artistic quality, I felt the applicant did a great job of making it a point to bring both local and regional talent to their stage, and also that they include a variety of themes and genres for diverse representation of musical arts. So their commitment to providing artistic variety to the community was fantastic to see. For community engagement, they made a fantastic note of involving and rotating local food vendors in addition to local musicians when possible and fitting. And so it was admirable also that the applicant had a family-friendly and highly affordable program design. For project management, the project timelines were short. For example, there was no mention of the time musicians or bands would be booked. Such things are likely months in advance of the event itself and would have been good to note, but this was a very well-written application.
Thank you. Pam, you are second reader on this one.
I concur with what she has said. I think it was a good application. The one note that I did put out is what their estimate for their audience. They based it on 30 cars per event, which I would think in a facility in a major park like that with increased marketing efforts, you could reach a lot more people. So I'd like to see them kind of up their PR a little bit to utilize what they have.
Any other comments from the panel? Yes, Pat. Remember to talk to each other.
I'm not looking to you.
I know.
No offense. No, when I went back and I looked at the joint county park board members, I mean, I was a little bit shocked by the political affiliation. I mean, what business does this have in an application like this? I don't think it would feel like it's appropriate at all. I worried about their surveys because they didn't really talk about surveys afterwards, how they measure their success or not. And then also how they do accessibility. I mean, accessibility was almost silent for anybody with disabilities, and that concerned me greatly.
I just
Good
Yeah.
point.
I had a question about the total project cash income versus the total project cash expenses in the application. They're supposed to equal what they're not equaling. Does anybody else notice that? This is my
I
question.
did.
Yeah.
I did. The expenses exceeded the income that they had listed in their budget, which I thought was a little concerning for them.
So
Yes.
that was cause for me to sign up.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, please finalize your online comments and scores in the system. Okay, our next application is from Early Music Associates. Project name is 2020 Early Music Festival. Curtis, you are the first reader on this one.
This was a really strong application. And some of the strengths I noticed was there was highlighting a successful 25-year run in the application. A lot of strength was bolstered, I thought, by the partnerships that this organization has forged in the community with IUJ School of Music, Historical Performance Institute, for Music America. There seemed to be a really good focus on both these local partnerships as well as there was high caliber musicians being brought in and artists and friends. So artistic quality was very high scored. Well, it was really strong. Multimedia samples were also very helpful in gauging the quality, artistic quality. As far as community engagement goes, I thought that they're doing a really good job. Particularly the instrument headings seem like just a really great and unique way to bring lots of people in. Let's see what's here. One thing that I think could have been improved was while there was a lot of local performers were giving input during the planning stage in the process, the overall planning and development process seemed to be looking towards performers and people who are involved, as opposed to doing more broader community outreach that's getting a pulse of people who aren't at the event or people who might need additional audiences to tap into. That was one of the few critiques that I had. But overall, just a really strong application.
Thank you. Madison, your second reader on this one?
I concur with the majority of what Curtis said. I thought they had really beautiful promotional materials that demonstrated the quality of their marketing. And I thought, it's obvious that they're expanding the list of offered activities and, of course, the partner organizations. But I hope to learn a little bit more about how they were using past experiences to inform this year's project. And I think they've had over 20 years of experience, which is impressive. But maybe talk a little bit about how the feedback from previous events is informing the upcoming project.
Now I'll open it to the full panel. Any additional comments on this application? Yes, Pat?
My only question here was on the diversity of the participants. That wasn't really specified. Other than that, I thought this was an exceptionally strong application.
Okay. If there are no additional comments, please finalize your scores and comments in the online system. The next application is Early Music Associates. The project is Shakespeare's Ear, and Phil, you are the first reader for this one.
Yes, thank you. Shakespeare's Ear is a relatively specific part of the early music, which of course is a a huge assembly of performances and this is focused on 16th century English music, drama, history, and the target audience is fourth to sixth graders. There are two parts. One is a 2-week workshop, and then there are also, let's see here, also more workshops. Anyway, they've done an excellent job. This is their 10th year, and based on what's presented here, it has grown substantially over the years. That's always good to see. Drawing on the local community for artistic quality is such a huge reservoir here. They've obviously done an excellent job. Community engagement, not only the association itself, but the community at large, and also the university. There's clearly a huge pool of talent with the university, and they're making every effort to utilize that. Project management seemed to be more than adequate. The budget has been developed over time. They've been on solid footing all along. Yeah, I believe that's it.
Pat, your second reader on this one?
Okay, particularly notable for me was that the links to the performers and teaching artists, I mean, that shows a greater diversity for the audiences that are out there that want to learn more about this program. Promotional materials I felt were outstanding. I do feel, however, their social media links could be more diverse than what they are. I mean, Facebook and that's it. And I do like the fact that they emphasize they're out in public schools where there's more diversity, and they're deliberately working with lower income areas where the arts are less funded.
Thank you. I'll open it to the full panel. Any additional comments? Yes, sir.
I felt the applicant indicated a very professionally executed artistic program and a desire for constant improvement of the audience experience.
Great.
I was also impressed that they had really considered the school curriculum component. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to gauge how the program reinforces what they're already learning in the classroom. I think there are different ways that they could accomplish that, but I'm happy to know that it's tied in and reinforcing those concepts.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, if you would finalize your scores and comments in the online system. Our next application is Forgotten Clefs, is the name of the organization, and the project name is Shawns and Stories. Madison, you are the first reader on this application.
Yes, this was a fun and interesting application to read. I think the program is really interesting in that it's keeping art traditions alive from an important time in European history. Obviously, they have very high quality artists, but then it got me thinking, how is this program fitting into existing curriculum requirements for the students? So I thought overall, a really strong application.
Thank you. Sarah?
I concur with Madison, but I'll just add that in my opinion, the applicant showed a desire to maximize professionalism, and they used their projects, lessons learned to inform better management of the artists and the project in the future.
Thank you. Any other comments from the panelists on this project?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
They had a very well-thought project timeline, and it included a really smart consideration of their award periods so that the applicant plotted a 1 to 2 week residency so they could maximize the use of their IAC funds. And that showed a lot of consideration to be professional and to be good stewards of the award. That was nice.
Any other comments on this one? Okay, hearing none, I would ask you to finalize your comments and scores. next application is the IU Eskenazi Museum of Art. Tactile 3D prints is the project. Pam, you're the first reader on this one.
Okay. Overall, I thought this also was a very strong application. I know it's a new project for them, so they don't really have history here. The tactile 3D art, I think, is huge. And we all know the more senses you use when you experience something, the better. It is, so I think that is great. The community engagement part, I know in the application discussed, for people with disabilities in a better way, but I think overall it will benefit everybody. It didn't really spell out if this would only be just for disability people that come through the museum as opposed to maybe anybody who wanted to go through it. So I think to widen the audience there would be a little bit good, but overall I thought it was a good application.
Curtis, you're the second reader on this one.
I echo the sentiments of it being a strong application. I thought it was unique. It seems like a unique intersection. I think that's something that's it's a unique intersection of working with people with varying degrees of ability, finding that intersection with an art museum. And, I thought that was really fresh and exciting. When it came to community engagement and tracking that, they're going to collect qualitative data and information through interviews, and that's going to be very powerful. But I didn't see as strong of quantitative data collection methods being applied. And so that was something I took into consideration, and that could, that would be something to improve going forward. And I think that was the only difference that I had.
Any additional comments on this application from panelists?
I just want to add that this was a refreshing instance of art museum and university informatics coming together. I'm not sure where the original kernel of this was, but the concept of using quite a new technology, 3D printing, to engage the art museum and an underserved population, I thought was very impressive.
I wanted to add, I just saw in my notes, remember something that being the first year of this project going forward, seeing those credentials from the different leads in this project was really helpful for me, and that led to that freshness and excitement that I saw, because I saw these different experts in different fields come together in a way that connected you wouldn't see normally in some project.
I agree. I'm sure everyone involved will benefit from this.
Yeah, I agree that it was a really creative and ambitious project. The only thing that made me raise an eyebrow was that their 2018 fiscal year statement of activities, their income and expenses perfectly matched up to the penny for the entire year. And so that rarely happens in real life, and it made me just wanted to get to know this person and maybe have them manage my organization. But that's it.
Any other comments?
I think this is an old joke among accountants. When your assets equal your liabilities, well, you're broke. But no, it's not. I couldn't understand quite why it came out right on the penny as well.
Thank you. Good discussion. Appreciate it. If there are no other comments, I would ask you to finalize your scores and comments for this application. The next application is Jewish Theater of Bloomington. Project name is The Wanderer, and Pat, you are the first reader for this application.
Okay, despite the fact that this is a first-year applicant, the company itself has deep history of productions going back since 2005. The artistic quality, under artistic quality, Spring 2020 Play Gold is to deep and challenge the ongoing community-wide conversations surrounding diversity. Going into the description that they had there, they more than did that. They went into great depth in terms of how they will go about achieving artistic quality. I think it's extraordinarily good. They're expanding from single productions into 6 recent productions per year, which means that they're having success. Whenever you're broadening like that, that means that the community wants you, likes you, and is hearing your message. Community engagement, they're reaching out to diverse audiences with compelling productions, and I think that hits home really hard in the entire application. Outreach, they're outreaching to the community, to organizations, to faith communities, which I thought was interesting, and I also give them kudos for that. Senior and group ticket discounts, that's excellent too. In terms of the impact, they're doing box office records for new attendees, which is something unique. I don't see that in any of the others that we've had thus far. And in terms of management and performance and management and timeline, I think it's all outstanding.
Thank you. Pam, you're a second reader on this one?
Yes, I concur and don't really have anything additional to add to that.
Thank you. Any other comments from the panelists?
With the community engagement, this is just something I was impressed by, that reaching out to the different faith leaders and people in the community, that was part of the production process. That was part of the planning, decision making, and so that was very impressive. We did that.
Yeah, and I think they had really interesting goals like increasing their audience size by 20% was one specifically. But it's a bit abstract to the reader, you know, based on average attendance, how many more participants would you need to reach that goal?
Okay, if there are no other comments, I would ask you to finalize your scores and your comments in the online system. Our next application is Let Music Speak, and the project name is Paoli Fest. And Sarah, you are the first reader on this project.
Right. For artistic quality, I felt the applicant had a strong vision and purpose, and they offer enriching events to the community. The diversity of the arts and the form of the engagement offered with mural painting, films, and music, it appears ambitious and well-reasoned. For community engagement, my note is basically bravo for forming the Paoli Fest Creative Youth Committee and for planning to feature art created by local groups, which the applicant noted included recovery and retirement community groups. Project management, they had a very well-plotted project timeline, and and that's basically something.
Madison, you're second reader on this one.
Yes, I thought that the historical narrative that the writer provided was incredibly compelling, and I commend them for taking on the project. But I still would like to know more about what you learned, the lessons learned from the first festival, and how you're incorporating that knowledge into this next festival. They put really great numbers around the support team that they have in organizing the festival, but I'd like to know how many actual attendees participated in the festival. What does that look like? So those are just a few things that came to mind.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the full panel for any additional comments on this one.
I just want to add that the narrative was very strong throughout this application. There was a definite story, and I felt like I was being taken through a story as I read the application. So it was the
Somebody else used the word compelling. It was compelling.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, I would ask you to finalize your comments and your scores in the online system for this application. Our next organization application is Maple Leaf Performing Arts Center. Project name is Maple Leaf Arts Village Gallery. Curtis, you are the first reader on this application.
Great. I really like the idea of having a gallery space and a performance space. Just my background, I'm around that every day. So hopefully my comments can help them through this process. There are a few things that jumped out to me. With this being a new project, I was hoping to see some models maybe that could be looked to in the planning and the numbers that will be presented. That would have been helpful for me to see that, oh, we're looking at this organization, this similar type of a institute. These are the challenges they face. These are how we're going to transcend those barriers. I kind of had a hard time imagining with the gallery space. I had a hard time imagining what it would look like. I was wanting to be kind of taken through the experience of seeing that gallery space, just getting the visionary introduction to it. I think that having a narrative of that sort that tells you what the person in the space is going to experience would have helped with the artistic quality or projections of what the artistic quality and experience would be like. With the community engagement, their advisory committee, I think that was a strength. Bringing in artists and having them be part of the process, planning. I would like to see addressing barriers that are going to come up. The application felt a little bit surface and a little bit, I'm an optimist, but it felt a little overly optimistic at times. And that, not that optimism is bad, but that it often felt like I wanted to see more details supporting that. The projected participation, the 52 weeks, and the projection was capacity shows every week for 52 weeks. And a lot of their decisions were based on having 52 weeks of full shows for their numbers and basing staff members off that. I think it would be good to, again, look to other models that have similar structures and see what their participation percentages are. That would help make project for staffing decisions and other types of expenses a little more concretely. Let's see. One other concern that I had was, and maybe the rest of the panel can help me with this, but it seemed like one thing that was being purchased was a capital purchase. There were cases for the artwork that's going to be put in, and so that's being asked. Money is being allotted from this project to support the purchase of a capital purchase. And I wanted to open that up. Maybe the second reader can follow up on that. Is that supported by this grant, or is it outside of bounds?
Yeah, so a portion of the project budget will be eligible, the capital expenses, not all of it, a portion.
Okay.
And that will be adjusted if scored high enough to proceed.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. Then the only follow-up I would have, that would be a more granular clarification of what percentages would be allotted to that purchase would help with that area of the application. But overall, like I said, I love the idea of melding a performance art space and having an art gallery. I live that every day, and I hopefully the comments help achieve that goal.
Thank you. Phil, your second reader.
Yes, thanks, Kurt. I agree with you on each point. This is a new facility, as they point out. I'm trying to be objective because I live in Brown County. But the fact that, well, I actually saw as a positive that this grant would be for capital expenditures, specifically exhibition signage and cases, display cases. I like that focus. I like that attention rather than we just need money to get this art village going, which is would be quite nebulous, and they were much more specific than that. It's a great complement to what's understandably a musical arts center, bringing in the visual arts and connecting that with the community and the history that Brown County has with the visual arts, I just think it's a real natural. I was delighted to see this.
Any other comments from panelists on this one?
I noticed in the application that the links they provided for both the social media and website were broken. So we weren't able to access those without going on, doing a little research of our own. And they did note that rural communities have fewer and less diverse artistic opportunities, and I wanted to know more about the outreach that they were going to do to attract regional artists to exhibit in the space, how they're going to broadcast in their terms. And also, they didn't specify what percentage of the sales from the art the artists would actually get to keep. They kind of put that back into their budget, which I questioned. Curtis's point about the number of direct participants, that 100,000 based on 52 sellout shows, I'm not sure that's a realistic goal, but something to point out for sure. And also to Curtis's point, having not seen the venue, I'm curious how they're going to drive foot traffic to the gallery space when everyone's trying to get into the theater for the concert. I'd like to know what that looks like.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, kind of to jump off that comment, I don't know if they would consider, will the gallery only be open during shows, or is there a way to lock off the venue and have the gallery open at other times during the week for visitors to come through also?
Yeah. It also concerned me that, I understand that they're not up and running, but in lieu of a P&L, maybe projected revenues would have been something helpful, or something from the county, since they are technically a government entity. I think the purpose of that section is to demonstrate sound fiscal management of this organization, and they haven't provided any documentation to that effect. So I want to be assured that they're going to be good fiscal stewards.
In the application, they cite receiving some monies from the Performing Arts Center budget. But it would be nice to see that budget, or at least a portion of that budget. That was great. One question, I know we're going to go on, but one thing I wanted to ask the panel was, there are lots of art galleries in Brown County, like little galleries, and with watercolor paintings and stuff. And it seemed like, in looking at this application, that it would be a similar type of gallery. I wanted to see, I didn't mention this in my opening comments, but I wanted to see a more conscious questioning of how the gallery space here is going to fit into that ecosystem that already exists. And I think that's a question that needs to be asked to make it unique. What's the unique value of this edition of gallery in this community?
I think it's a very important point, and the application indicates that they're making efforts to integrate well into the community, but I certainly I doubt that they're considering themselves as competition for local galleries. If they are, then that's clearly a problem. But you're right, they should have clarified that.
Thank you. Excellent discussion. Thank you for that. Unless there are any additional comments, I'd ask you to finalize your comments and your score in the online system. Our next application has a conflict of interest, so I'm going to once again ask Curtis to step out. Okay, our next organization is Midway Music Speaks. The project is Midway Music Festival. Phil, you are first reader for this application.
All right, let me catch up with my scrolling here.
When you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I will just read the mission statement because I think it's quite good. Midway Music Speaks, celebrates and connects women and underrepresented individuals in music via promotion, empowerment, and performance opportunities. that was certainly the focus. The project is an outdoor music festival. Certainly their aim is commendable. They're drawing on, as I think, a large artistic community as they can, and kudos for that. The artistic quality obviously is only going to be as good as the participants, but they're doing everything they can to encourage that. Community support was certainly favorable. I like their Facebook presence. They may have had a more diverse media outreach, but to have a good quality entries on Facebook is really important, I think, and they have done that. Project management appeared to be fine. I'm not very good at assessing financial implications, but as I said, this addresses an obvious problem with the music industry in a very constructive way.
Thank you. Pat, your second reader on this one.
Okay, the thing that caught my attention was that even though they've done this 2 years, this will be the third year, they've made adjustments already, using feedback from the audience, using feedback from the audiences and the performers themselves too, for that matter, and other organizations throughout the community. The fact that they're adjusting is commendable. Their project managers, their project management, the way they go about organizing the event itself is commendable. I also like the fact that they're celebrating diversity of musical styles, even though they're all underrepresented performers. I don't know what else to say to make this better, because their promotional materials are extraordinarily good.
Thank you. Any other comments from panelists on this application? Okay, well, hearing none, I would ask you to finalize your comments and scores. We'll go fetch Curtis. Okay, our next application is from the Morgan County Community Concerts Association, the Morgan County Community Concerts. Madison, you are first reader on that one.
Yes, this is a long-running series. They had fun promotional materials that I enjoyed reviewing. I thought artistically it was great, but I had some questions regarding the community engagement, specifically, how they are communicating with the community at large regarding the acts that they're booking for the series. Are people asking for these specific acts that they have? And I wanted to know more about the partnerships with the high schools. So if Morgan County schools are planning and evaluating the outreach program, I just want to know how they're incorporating that feedback into next year's program. I appreciated the diversity of the participating artists. I thought they were just really great quality. Moving down to the financial statements, I did have a concern that those were not provided. So there's no real record to demonstrate their money management skills, which is a concern.
Okay. Sarah, your second reader on this one.
I agree with Madison on the artistic quality and the strength of that. That was great to see. And I also had concerns about the engagement, not questioning the quality of it, but my comment is that the outreach program would have been nice to hear more about. They explain the why they do the outreach program, but not the how. And so in future applications, I would ask that they please expand on how it's offered or implemented and possibly provide an example.
Any other comments from the panelists on this one? Yes, Pat.
Again, the financial, they show a budget and that's it. that's a concern to me.
Okay. Any other comments?
I did also notice on this application that in their planning timeline, they reference July 2017 to 2018. So they need to kind of make sure they're talking the right year.
Cut and paste.
Yep.
Any other comments?
Sorry, I'm trying to
Okay.
figure out here. I think when I was looking over the budget, it looked like the grant amount requested in the budget is different from what was requested through the portal. Looked like they were different, but I think that might have been a switch up. Looked like maybe a typo. There were two grants listed, one for 2,500-ish and one for 5,000, and they were switched. So that would be something, I don't know if it's a typo or not, but if I'm reading it literally, I believe that was a mistake there.
That's a great point, and I didn't see where they linked the required budget template. Did I miss that?
You got it printed right there. It's the IAC and the SCI are the same. So I think these are switched. That's what I think, but I'm
Yes,
inferring.
Yes, that's exactly, yeah, they've
They
switched.
switched them. I think
Switched
that's what's
grants.
going on.
Yeah,
I think it
yeah,
makes
the-
sense.
Yeah, the IAC should be 5,000, and the SCI or MC should be 750. Yeah, mistake. Clear.
Okay, thank you, teamwork. I love this. Thank you. There are no other comments. I would ask you to finalize your scores and comments for this application. Our next application is for from the Nashville Arts and Entertainment District for the Interactive Public Art Program. Pam, you are the first reader on this one.
Okay, give me a second here. I thought overall this was a good application. I didn't, as far as the artistic quality, they said they were going to pick these artists. I didn't quite understand how they decided on the artists they chose. So I guess I would have liked to see for a public art installation a little bit more of an open call or kind of a little more guiding in exactly why you pick what you pick. I know they're all established artists and they will do good art, but I'm just not sure how those choices were made. And community engagement, if it's out public art installation, you have lots of community engagement viewing the art, so that was all good. Project management, planning. There wasn't a whole lot of detail to the planning and how it would be established in a timeline there, so thought it lacked a little bit in that section, but overall those were my biggest issues, and I think it's a good project, just needs a little more detail.
Curtis, your second reader on this one.
Yes. I think it's really cool. I like the idea of going to Brown County and walking down the street and seeing recycled art or something out, something just very unique and site-specific or community-specific. And so I think there's a lot of potential there to do something new, fresh, exciting. But since this is a public art experience, I think there needs to be more definition in how the community input is going to be solicited. The artists that are selected, it looks like there's artistic quality there, but the application kept saying notoriety or that they were known in communities or that they would draw people. So I think that was trying to speak to how the community was being engaged in the artistic output that would be on public display. But I wanted to see a little more of getting out and questioning or maybe showing the community models or what these artists' work look like and getting more feedback in that regard. The information collecting that's mentioned in the grant is commissioners on site, talking with people and collecting information. That's laudable, but I would just like to see surveys or something a little more quantitative and concrete when it comes to the community engagement and soliciting. It's so important with public art to get that line. When it came to the, let's see, make sure I got my notes here. It came to the financials, it felt very generalized. I would have liked to see more depth in the budget, just more details. That's it. That's what yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments from the panelists on this one? Yes, Pat?
The one item that jumped out on me was under inclusion efforts. They have one sentence in here, we do consider some middle school students as underserved. Well, I think they should be making an effort to identify where they are and who they are and how many they are, instead of just saying some.
Okay. Other comments?
Tying in with that note, they had owned, I believe, well, never mind, I can't say for sure that it was this application. I felt like it was this one they owned up to. Nashville's not necessarily known for the diversity of its population, but we do recognize that some middle school students are underserved, and because of that, they noted that they would be working closely with the Brown County Enrichment for Teens, and it was nice to see that they were very honest about the population they serve, and it appeared to be doing a good job of planning collaborations with local groups that do serve the disadvantaged population of their community.
I think that's a great point, but I'm still a little unclear as to what those partnering organizations are bringing to the project. Like I appreciate that they're reaching out to Beta and Centerstone and these different organizations, but I just don't know exactly what that collaboration means. And who are their other community partners? I mean, as an entity connected to the town of Nashville, how is the town supporting this project outside of the committee? And I thought that they were bringing in really talented artists as they've demonstrated here, but I thought it was a little abstract. I kind of wanted them to walk us through a day in the life of one of the participating art partners, because they have, maybe they'll do a permanent installation, maybe it'll be a take-home material, maybe there will be an interactive component. It's just, it felt a little too loose in what they were trying to accomplish, and I don't think overly ambitious. I think it's a great proposal, but I would have just liked to have seen much more clear guidelines around that. And then lastly, they provided an incomplete budget, and the expenses page was completely blank, which was a missed opportunity to provide a narrative around the dollars that they were requesting.
Any other comments on this one? Hearing none, I'd ask you to finalize your comments and scores in the online system. Our next application is Orange County Rehabilitative, the First Chance Art Program. Pat, you're the first reader on this one.
Okay, this program is beginning their 13th year. They've got 12 years under their belt. They give persons with disabilities an opportunity to express themselves through creative arts, and the creative arts include, and this is very diverse, ceramics, wood crafting, acrylic paints, fused glass. All the artists that are involved with this are very experienced. Community engagement, I thought, was exceptionally strong here. They're focusing on supporting and cultivation of the arts in rural communities, and cultivating community inclusion for telling positive impressions of persons with disabilities, giving incentives also to a full range of disabilities, or giving inclusiveness to all of those. Their feedback mechanism loop using community surveys is good, interviews is good, observations good. I wish there was some other mechanism that we could add to this, but I'm not sure what it really is. Their project management was very strong. Timeline was very strong in the end, and I felt financial statement was very good.
Thank you. Phil, your second reader on this one.
Yes, I agree. It's certainly a commendable effort. I had a little difficulty identifying what is the target group of people with disabilities. That's true, but I never heard any reference to even Orange County in particular. I wonder if there are other organizations that work with this group that could be involved in this effort as well. And while the budget was extensive, it appeared to me it was primarily about the organization rather than this specific project. I came away not really knowing what the monies would be used for specifically.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the rest of the panel on this one? Okay, hearing none, I would ask you to finalize your scores for this application. My next application is Owen County Sounds for Music Festival. Sarah, you're the first reader on this one.
Okay, so they are providing string music instruction and performance opportunity to youth who would otherwise, it appears, not have such access locally, and certainly not as affordably. For artistic quality, I felt that was important and commendable. For community engagement, the nature of their project appeared to be their fashion of addressing community engagement. They're serving otherwise underserved population, but it was not made very clear, in my opinion, any additional inclusion that was attempted. However, what they're already doing, I felt was noble enough, might be an overstatement, but I felt they covered the ground of community engagement by virtue of their project's mission, period. Project management, the project activities timeline was, in my opinion, too vague, given that this section is intended to show the competency of the applicant to manage the project effectively. With 12 years of execution, certainly the applicant gets done what needs to be done, but it would have been nice to see a planned time to prepare advertisements, rent the venues, etc., to show that the work is actually well planned and executed.
Thank you. Pam, you are second reader on this one.
Yes, so I was a little confused exactly on the mission of this application. They stated different things in different parts of it. I read that they wanted to pay accompanists, that they wanted to repair and replace instruments, and to provide affordable lessons. And those are big goals, but they didn't specify like the division of how they were going to divvy up that money or how they were going to do it. So I would have liked to see, like, our main mission is this. If we have extra, we'll do this and this. Just so it was a little more clear exactly what it was going to be used and how it was going to be used. I too had a little bit issue with a not very detailed plan. And the other part was I didn't quite understand where the students came from. Do they advertise at the school? Is it just word of mouth? If you know and you want to play a violin, it just wasn't spelled out. So if you're not familiar with the program, I didn't understand where the kids came from. And so just a little bit of cleanup there to make it a little more clear on how the organization runs and works.
I agree. There's a mention of IU, reference to a junior music festival at IU in May. But I don't know that IU is simply providing the facility, or is they're also talking about piano accompaniment? Is there some direct involvement with the Jacob School of Music? Or if not, could there be? I agree, it was just a little unclear as to who was responsible for what.
Thank you. Other comments? Pat?
I'm with the others. I thought it was vague in a lot of areas.
Yep.
I have two areas that maybe Christine, you mentioned, you thought about it a little differently than I did. When it came to artistic quality, I feel like the application states that they're going to be doing, I think it's fantastic to teach kids music. But there, as far as artistic quality, a couple of criteria here. There's no mention of how those artists or teachers were selected or vetted, or the what pedagogical methods or what they're aiming for. Is it state standards when it comes to music accomplishment or the students, or what is the goal? So artistic quality felt a little lacking in that area. When it came to community engagement, again, it felt like this is my background is in music, classical music, and whenever there's a classical music program, I want to see how that is connecting with the students in the community. Just having an educational program, I'm wondering, I think there's a missed opportunity to talk about what's being performed and how that connects with the person, with the people, as opposed to saying this is a learning opportunity. Kids are going to learn music, because saying that it's classical music on its own is valuable enough. That argument holds less and less water, just now in the classical music world. So I think it could be a lot stronger if we found ways to show a little more engagement as in getting input from community members, and then classical music really responding to that in a very purposeful way, and having an impact. Hopefully that's helpful, because I think it's a great project, and I wanted to do those things as a musician, classical musician.
Any other comments?
I just noted that the Facebook link that they provided wasn't working for me. And under artistic quality, they mentioned in their narrative that a program brochure was attached, but I did not find that on the application. Did anyone else see that or miss that?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
They had mentioned in their narrative there was a program brochure attached, but I didn't find it to the
I couldn't.
application.
Mhm.
Additionally, I think a big part of the community impact is telling us, how many kids specifically are participating in the program, and discussing the ability to bring on community partners to even advertise the program. So I felt like that section was lacking in data. And lastly, they didn't utilize the required budget template under that section. And organizational expenses exceeded their income, which to me means they need some work around demonstrating that they have a fiscally sound budget.
And one more thing, I don't want to keep things on. Like I said, I want to be positive about this, and I want this to succeed. I'm looking at the board. I think the board might. There are 4 members of the board. They seem to do a lot of heavy lifting when you're thinking about sustainability of a project going forward. Might be worthwhile looking at adding or possibly fleshing out a little bit.
I absolutely agree.
Thank you. Good discussion. Okay, so I would ask everyone to finalize your scores and comments for this application. Okay, our next application is from Stonebelt Inc., project name with IMU, and Curtis, you are the first reader on this one.
application. When it came to the artistic quality, I went into it. I mean, this is a program, as we all know, is showcasing performers of varying ability. And so I wanted to look at this holistically as an adjudicator. And so I did my best to look at how successfully this project was achieving its mission, how successfully these performers were achieving their mission through the performance and through the process. And I was very impressed when I watched the YouTube videos. They were very, I don't know how to describe it, very touching, very special, very intimate, and moving. So just very powerful. And the application, I think, showcases that very clearly. And also it was very helpful to see the details as far as the production process, because I realized as reading through this application that the application clearly shows that the production is part of the performance, it's part of the outcome, because these participants are having a transformational experience. And so the production is very detailed, and I appreciated that because it just made for a stronger application. The community engagement, there's a high level of diversity, a high level of engaging and working with specific communities. Let's see, one thing that I think could strengthen this application is that it showcased, I mean, there are lots of stigmas and barriers and misconceptions surrounding disability. And if we read between the lines, we see those being broken down, but they're not expressly stated as barriers that are going to be overcome. And I think that was articulated clearly in the application about, okay, people with this disability are often characterized or stigmatized this way. So we are going to address that stigma with this action. This is the outcome we're going to see. And similarly, I think with the community engagement, there seems to be a strong component of community engagement with reaching out to communities that are supporting people with varying degrees of ability. But what I wanted to see was, I wanted to see people people who no one in their family has Down syndrome. They've never really been, in contact with that type of experience, getting into that, getting drawn in. So looking for populations of people who would really have their eyes opened by this was something that, that was just a minor critique that I was wanting as I saw it read through the application. But overall, very strong. The project management I thought was really strong. The production process was very well articulated. That was really, I was very impressed by the application.
Madison, you were second leader on this one.
I would only add that I appreciated that they were very specific in their methods of measurement in the community impact section. I thought they were really creative in how they were going to gauge impact. That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments from panelists on this application?
I just want to second that the emphasis on the participants telling their own stories instead of having support people telling their stories for them, to me was just very powerful. To me that makes this a very compelling argument.
Yes, Pat.
Under the community engagement, the detail that they go into for how the project will address these issues and how the participants participate in the project. It's just extraordinarily good. This is, you just can't do any better than this.
Any other comments?
This is kind of a more personal comment, but one of my best friends has a daughter in a wheelchair, and she actually took dance class, and watching her on stage performing, not to the ability of other people, but in her ability, and the other girls take her in and accept her. I'm kind of contradicting a little bit of Curtis's comment about focusing on their, excuse me, disabilities and overcoming those barriers. By actually not talking about them, you're not putting them out there that day for those kids who live with those barriers day in and day out. It's like, it's their one day to perform as them. And
Sure. I'd like to clarify. When I was talking about the barriers, I didn't articulate it clear. I was thinking more of the barriers for audience members or misconceptions that others might have. So reaching out to groups of people who don't interact with
yeah,
try to get
right, and I agree with that. I guess I understood you to say that somehow they incorporate that during the show to explain that to people. And I think somehow you need to get them there and then let them experience that themselves. But I think it's a great project.
Thank you. Great discussion. If there are no other comments, please finalize your scores. The comments in the audience. Our next application is from USA International Harp Competition. The project is the 11th annual harp competition, and Phil, you are our first reader for this one.
Thank you. The application is from the USA International Harp Competition, and they have made I believe, a compelling argument for there is international recognition for this competition, triennial competition. It is a competition for gifted young harpists. In terms of artistic quality, the competition draws heavily on support from and faculty from the IU Jacob School of Music, which also hosts the competition. It's absolutely stellar. I don't see how it could possibly be any stronger. They're requesting $10,000 for project staffing, publicity, and marketing. Those are all fine and dandy, but when I went to the budget, I learned that 5,000 plus 5,000 is equal to 10,000, and that's about it. So if they're going to go into project staffing, publicity, and marketing, I'd like significantly more detail on how that money would be used accordingly. Community engagement is outstanding. It's really international. They're going to do live streaming over the period, which is July 3rd through 13th, so it's an extensively mapped out program. I think everything about the organization, the fact that this is the 11th one and it has just continued to grow, and again, I'm trying to filter out my own experience with what's stated in the application, but I think they account for themselves quite well.
Thank you. Second reader on this one is Pat.
I'm hard pressed to say anything. I love the feedback mechanisms they're using here to change and improve on a continuing basis, where they're doing surveys of audience members, jury members, contestants, and volunteers, and then they'll go back again and survey again. I mean, this is an infinite feedback loop that makes it better and better and better, and I mean, they're close to perfection now, and I'm not sure how they get better, but they are. And then one thing that was buried here under inclusion efforts is that they will have one free shuttle running from a 2-hour period to allow them to respond to special requests should there be a need for a special patron, for a patron with special needs. And then live streaming, perfect audience, what can you say?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the project management timeline is extraordinarily tight. The way they showed their financial profit and loss statement, very professional.
Any other comments on this application?
With the community engagement component, there was the post-pandemic, and the community would post
I'm not sure that was brought up in the application, but I certainly agree that it's commendable.
Any other comments on this application? If not, I would ask you to finalize your comments and your scores in the online system. I would note that Madison had to step out for just a second, and since she's the reader on the next first reader
Take a
on the
breather.
next application, we will pause for just a moment until she comes back. Okay, our next application is Writers Guild at Bloomington, project name Spoken Word Series, and Madison, you're the first reader for this one.
I thought that this sounded like a very impressive series that they're obviously continuously improving upon. I had a lot of positive comments here. I thought that they were doing a really great job on the community engagement piece. They were creative in the ways that they were reaching out to different populations in the community. And I'd like to know more about how their project impacts some of those populations, specifically the homeless in their area. And I was wondering if there was any chance that they could maybe work to set up referral programs to connect participants to services, maybe take this one step further for those populations. Additionally, let's see here. I think they had a great project manager and additionally a very detailed and thoughtful budget.
Thank you. Curtis, you are the second reader on this application.
You said, Madison, you said most of what I was thinking. Just to follow up on the engagement, it was interesting how they took into consideration economic impact with their partner, the bookstore. So I thought that was a good metric to tracking. Yeah, you said it all.
Great. Any additional comments from other panelists on this application?
They mentioned their involvement in the 4th Street Art Fair and described it as flagship 4th Street. That's marvelous. I actually didn't understand until this the connection between that organization and between the spoken word stage and 4th Street, but it's a very good opportunity.
Any other comments on this application?
I forgot. I just was here that I was just taking a look at the board members. There are 3 board members who are highly involved in production, and 2 of those 3 have been there for quite a while. So, you can never tell the future. They're still a pretty young organization, but might be good to think about maybe having a couple more members there on the board.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'd ask you to finalize your comments and your scores in the online system for this application. And with that, this concludes the FY20 Region 8 Regional Initiative Grant Panel, APS. for this afternoon. Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much, audience, for being here. And panelists, if you'll sit tight for a couple minutes, I want to ask you some questions. I'm Courthouse Square, and I have a lot of experience in the arts. I'm honored to be part of this panel.
My name is Ahmed Barker. I'm from Monroe County, Wilmington. I work at Indiana University Jacob School of Music, doing music entrepreneurship and career development. I'm also president of a non-profit organization that runs the Wilmington Music Festival, and I'm on a number of different boards and committees and what have you, so been around for a while.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Baum. Recently retired as a one-week lieutenant. I worked with the area attendant in the Annenberg Center, which is a senior center where we have lots of art programs going. And I live in Brown County.
I am Maria Costa Down Bedford in Lawrence County. I'm a retired Foreign Service officer and the president of the Lawrence County Historical and Genealogical Society. We have a nice county museum. If you haven't seen it, check it out.
I'm Jack Baker, retiree from Indiana University Department of Chemistry, engineer by training. Been part of the Wilmington Planning Commission for a number of years, retired from that now, and several other organizations within the city over the last 15, 20 years.
Great. Thank you. Now we'll begin the panel review, and this is how the process will work. I will announce the application we will review and then ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based on the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that the application does not need to be recapped since everyone has read it. Just provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I will ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or opposing comments. We're not looking for consensus, just a full evaluation from the different perspectives panelists bring to the table. After the second reader is finished, I will open the discussion to the full panel to offer their perspectives. Remember, in the interest of time, we're only looking for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, we will ask that panelist to leave during the application's evaluation. And just to know, we have no conflicts of interest during this panel, so we will not be asking anyone to step out. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we'll ask the panel to update their scores in the online system. It is common for scores to change as a result of the broader discussion amongst the panelists. These scores save automatically. Are there any questions from the panelists? I would ask you, or just remind you, to be sure to pull your microphone up and speak into the microphone because, again, we are recording this. We will make audio comments available for applicants to review after the panel session. Okay? Great. All right, first we're going to start with application from the Brown County Playhouse and AOS 2. Jack Baker, you are the first reader, so I'm going to kick it off to you.
All right, thank you. Question before I begin, would you prefer that we did or did not give our scores?
Yes, thank you. We do not want scores given. In fact, we would prefer that you, if you think it's a strong application, you certainly can indicate that, but we do not want, we would request that you not give information related to how you scored that application. So, thank you for that question. But again, just quickly, these panel scores are normalized across all the panels across the state, and scores can change. So again, if you think it's a strong application, we want to hear that, but we don't want to hear specific scores. So, good question.
So, just to begin, this is Brown County Playhouse Management, but in speaking about all these applications, I found that they're actually all seem stronger this year than the last couple of years. They seem to get a little stronger every year. I try to stay very close to the state criteria and be very strict about the state criteria when I evaluate these things, which is counter to the way I normally think about things, but still, it's an interesting process. So I tend to also score based on giving everybody the highest possible score in my, at least in my head as I go. There are many ways of doing this, but I tend to score from the top down. Give them the highest possible score, then deduct as I go along. And that's the way I've done this one and all the rest. So in terms of organizational excellence, I have comments here. I found that the narrative did provide a clear history and purpose. They seem to have a board that has a variety of people with expertise, and they are divided into groups of marketing and economic subgroups. They meet regularly. Those are criteria that seem consistent with what the state would like to see. They have consistent 3-year financials, and I noticed that the projected income for 2019 is up a bit from the previous 3 years, and that's actually probably a good sign. They have an income from a variety of sources, an important thing to give them, I think, stability over the years. Their budget is consistent with their previous years, and it's proportional to the staff size. And what I did find, though, that they have a budget projection, but I did not see a P&L included, and I had to rate down a bit based on that. In terms of community engagement, the narrative seemed to emphasize an undefined target. Here, I think the state would like them to be more specific. They used the word community rather than targeting actually what they were targeting within the community. Narrative did not include a two-way relationship, more of a do for the community than a do with the community. The narrative emphasized fair access and inclusion of subgroups and those that are underserved. And it increased, they had an imperative to increase access and diversity by implication, but without specifics. And I had to rate down on several of these things. The organization will get feedback to events, but there's no mention of active participation in planning for the target groups, and that's one of the things emphasized by the state. In terms of art and education, the narrative once again is very clear. They target youth for summer camp and are striving for the underserved. The target group outcomes described as assurance and pride. Maybe a little, I don't know, I didn't write them down on that, but I thought those words were a little vague, and a little more specificity might be important there. But the credentials of program providers was not discussed, and that generally is something that the state criteria asked for. It seemed to be a quality arts education program, and it appears to be of quality. Now, within artistic quality, it did seem to be high-quality ad material and website, as the state asks. Narrative emphasizes the arts with subsections. Once in a while I write in such a way that I don't even understand what I said. The narrative emphasized the arts with a subsection of the business. In other words, it is an organization that emphasizes the arts and minors the administrative ends, which is something that I think the state criteria asked for. The narrative emphasizes attention to the underserved in this section, and the narrative presents a commitment to meaningful, impactful experience to its target groups. All in all, a good application. I think we're going through everything here. Yeah. Okay, so that's my
Jack. I read the second reader on this application.
Thank you. I have just a few things to add. I agree with much of what's been said here. I've noticed that they're at the beginnings of the writing of a strategic plan for themselves as an organization, and I thought that was an excellent thing for them to be doing at this time as they try and engage with the community in a more substantial way. I thought that it, compared to a lot of what else we saw in the proposals, the strategic plan could be developed a lot more, and I would urge them to really emphasize that as a project going forward, and I think it would certainly strengthen the organization substantially. I'm very excited to see that they're also connecting themselves with an Indiana University project called the Center for Rural Engagement. I know that they're quite committed to that, and I believe that that will have a lot of good things going forward. I also thought that just in terms of their grant writing, it might be a good idea for them to seek assistance or advice or mentorship from other organizations as they tell their story, because I got the sense that there's a lot going on in Brown County, there's a lot that they're doing, there's a lot that they're engaging with the community about, but I don't believe that was effectively translated in their proposal, so I would urge them to do that.
Thank you. Now I'll open it up to the full panel. Any additional comments on this application folks would like to share? Okay, well, hearing none, I would ask you to finalize your scores and comments. And once you've done so, sort of lean back in your chair so that we'll know that you're done and you're ready to move on to the next application. So kick back on those rocking chairs once you're ready. And we'll move on. Okay, so it looks like we are ready to move on to our next application, Bloomington Playwrights Project. Jamie, you are the first reader on this application.
Okay, so I'm not as experienced at being a pianist as are my two predecessors here, so bear with me while I give my evaluation. I found this to be an extremely strong application. I think that their artistic quality has been proven and has been definitely just grown over the years. I feel like they're just such a neat organization to watch as they've grown and grown their programming. I didn't see, and forgive me if I just overlooked it, but I didn't see an Instagram account, and I do feel like in the social media world that's a really important platform to use, and since they're such a visually stimulating organization, I would suggest perhaps looking into that. And also, I didn't see in their application anything about the art that they show in their lobbies, and I think that might be something to also just let grant panelists know, as that's a very good way of engaging the community. So all in all, I just found it to be a very strong application.
Great, thank you. Rebecca, you're the second reader?
Yes, I found the application well written as well. I thought that as far as their, let me get up to it, their community engagement, it was unique that it's a typical senior audience that they refer to, that they serve, and it was refreshing to read about how they collaborated with Cook employees, providing discounted tickets to reach younger audiences and to be successful. And I think that would be great to be able to even extend that beyond to more groups. I found that unique. And I also appreciated the free student performances, having the free student performances. And my final. I was fascinated by the opportunities provided in learning and opportunities for youth to write and perform by developing in the theater.
Now I'll open it up to the full panel. Any additional comments on this application?
I just commented that last year's budget shortfalls were a little bit alarming.
Yeah.
They seem to be getting back on track with projections.
Mm-hmm.
Two quick things I just want to mention. I think that's a spectacular organization, great board, very, very good board development, and good strategic plan. And those three things, the fact that they've been around for a long time, that they have a strategic plan in place, and that their board develops as strong as it is, really helps the organization go through whatever growth it is looking for. And the other thing that I just found very interesting, and this is just a sort of a side point, they were talking about how their subscriptions have gone up and their single ticket sales have gone down, which is an interesting sort of counterintuitive report from them about where the trend in the market seems to be going, which is very interesting to see that.
Thank you. Any other comments on this application?
Yeah, I just want to add, since Elaine brought up the strategic plan, that I thought the strategic plan laid out some very good general goals, but I also I found that a lot in several of the applications where there's something you'd like to achieve, but there's not really a plan set in place to achieve that. So I would just clarify those goals.
Good discussion, thank you. If there are no further comments, then I would ask you to finalize your scores for this application. Okay, our next application is BCT Management. Rowena, you are the first reader on this application.
Yeah, you'll have to bear with me because the last time I did this kind of panel, I had a whole packet of papers in front of me.
Totally
Old school.
understand.
And I'm
Totally understand.
so used to doing business
Yes.
that way that scrolling through my comments
Yes.
is a whole different scene. But this was a really, really good proposal. And BCT, I mean, everybody knows about Kirk Chumley. Been around for a while, doing lots of good stuff. And now I'm trying to find my comments. On organizational excellence, sorry. I didn't really see a discussion of how the board represented area demographics. This was not an unusual problem, but there was a good discussion of how the board is broken into committees with specific responsibilities. You kind of envision how to make that work. The full board only meets 4 times a year because the committees meet more frequently, and that didn't really seem like enough given the size of the mission. I thought their strategic plan laid out their current situation well, challenges and opportunities, and how they would address those. As far as community engagement, I wondered if that film series for kids and the Golden Age series for seniors had been discussed with the target audiences ahead of time. You know, there's so much access now to film through technology, and I just wonder if there's going to be a good audience for going to see films in a theater or not. I guess what I would recommend is that they make clear what the input was from the target audience. Planned outcomes I thought were well described for some of the activities. Arts administration training for graduate, undergraduate, and community college students, and not really for some of the others, including TOS-COT, which was telling our stories. The planned outcomes were state mandated learning goals in history and social studies. So if you know what those are, good for you, but I don't, and there's no way of knowing what those are being addressed. And in terms of whether these populations are underserved, I don't think we could really call graduate, undergraduate, and community college students an underserved population. Local 3rd and 4th graders would be. And then in terms of artistic quality, I don't know if anybody else had this problem, but I could not watch the YouTube video. Anybody have that problem? So I can't really evaluate that. And then after I went and looked up YouTube videos myself and decided they were in good shape, I realized I wasn't supposed to watch things that were not part of the application, so forget anything I might say about that. So anyway, all in all, really good application. Lots of community activities and just a ton of programming and a good proposal.
Thank you. Jack, you are a second reader on this application.
Well, I have many of the same comments. I won't repeat. The community engagement, I gave high marks all across the board for that, particularly for the board selection and the fact that they had targeted interactive meetings and so on with in subgroups within the board. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. For me, I'm having the same problem scrolling. Yeah, very, very well focused narrative. board has active and focused subcommittees. So on there, I gave high marks in that area. Community engagement, I believe they had planned interactive meetings with, as well as passive surveys and group interviews in targeting underserved groups, and I gave them high marks for that. It's one of the few applications where they actually talk with people before they plan rather than entirely after that they plan. In terms of arts ed, I had a few comments. In that area, they didn't, they gave a good narrative, but it didn't discuss the underserved, how it's to be programmed. Otherwise, they did well in that area. Artistic quality. Going over some of the things that you said, but let me see. Underserved, provided as patrons, some mention in arts education, but again, not explicit in terms of who some of the underserved groups are. And that seemed to be a common fault with many of these, that they weren't explicit and that they did more passive information gathering than active. But overall, I agree with your comments.
Great, thank you. Now I'll open it to the full panel for any additional comments folks might have on this application.
The one thing that I brought out and remembered is in the arts education, how they were engaging with the 3rd and 4th graders in learning how to tell their story through short films, and then using those short films that were developed to share with the student schools and the families. I thought that was a pretty neat, unique learning experience, and its connection with meeting the state mandated learning goals for history and social studies.
In terms of organizational strength, again, very, very impressed by this organization, and any organization that's been around a long time, one can never assume that it's always sustainable, and I think that they're very mindful of what it would take for them to continue to be sustainable as an organization. And I just want to commend them for bringing in a consultant about that. They're going to be bringing in a development consultant this year to work on their future fundraising needs and goals and sustainability, and that's a good idea.
Any other comments?
Well, since Jack had brought up that he felt like the board was a strong board, I just wanted to say that I felt like that they could have diversify their board a little bit more with, I know it's made up of all business professionals, and perhaps having some artistic representation and even some community representation of people that would be audience members. I felt like that's something that they might be able to strengthen, and that would diversify their audience and also perhaps make it more accessible to underserved communities.
Any other comments? Good discussion, thank you. If you would take a minute to finalize your scores. All right, our next application is Cardinal Stage Company. Rebecca, you were the first reader on that application.
Yes, with the Cardinal Stage, I felt it was a strong grant that was written. The organizational excellence, I noted that as a result of changes to the organization, there have been significant improvements, including broadening the board representation, financial improvements, community outreach, and a strengthened strategic plan. And in community engagement, they've strengthened the outreach and engagement of younger audiences through a, they called it Nest Generation program. And there are plans to reach out to the LGBTQ Culture Center and Bloomington Pride for increased participation. They do seek community feedback for determining selections for the season. And they have partnership with Bloomington Academy of Film and Theater for local school within school drama classes. This is one, what caught my interest and eye is in working through the schools, through the arts in specific productions. They allow students to learn the history of, an example they gave was female scientists and mathematicians, and they provide subsidized tickets to the underserved schools. So I think that's a neat outreach program that combines science and mathematicians as well, beyond the art. So I just said, my final comment was, wow, I had heard about Cardinal, but reading this grant and reviewing the strategic plan it moved me to want to experience through my participation.
Jamie, you're the second reader on this application.
I really commend them for how strong their strategic plan was. They had it was very detailed, well articulated, and they had very measurable goals, and I think that's important for a strategic plan. Community engagement, I think they have lots of interesting ways of engaging the community. I'd like to see theater tickets become a little more affordable for low-income citizens, and I know that that's a goal they also share, so I'd like to see that developed. I think that some of the ways that they offer affordable options are really not very well known by the community, so getting the word out might be helpful. Their arts education program is like a real strong point for them. They have a lot of great partnership initiatives and really a clear commitment to youth. It would be good to see further outreach to rural youth and communities who are very seriously underserved. They seem to be a big enough organization that they could reach further. So they have a really strong leadership, that's obviously, and good internal evaluation skills, which is something that's not always present in the grants that I've read. So all in all, it's one of the stronger grants that I read.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the full panel for any additional comments.
Well, I just thought the losses of the last 2 seasons were pretty alarming. They did address them. Corrective action has been taken, and the early signs are good. But just duly noted. And arts education, which others have noted, is really good. Really good.
If there are no other comments, I would ask you to finalize your scores for this application. And our last AOS 2 application is Lotus Education and Arts Foundation. Alain, you are the first reader on this application.
Thank you very much. Another pretty spectacular organization, been around for 25 years. This is the 26th year now. I think, really for me, they were one of the strongest proposals in the set because they hit on all the different areas that the state requires in this proposal extremely well. They're a very strong organization within their board, within their strategic plan, within how they function administratively, organizationally. They've got an extremely strong volunteer network. Their education programs are really outstanding. They've evolved into an organization that functions year-round, working within the community at different times in different ways. Engaging with different sectors of the community depending on the type of programming that they do. For instance, in the summer they work a lot more closely with people of need. Their Lotus Blossoms in the spring works very closely with education institutions, the MCCSE school system, And then with the festival itself, they develop a number of very substantial relationships with other arts organizations, including Indiana University, during September. So no, they have a huge impact on the community as a whole. Specifically, they're going through some changes right now because they're looking for a new executive director. They may have chosen one by now. So that's obviously something that's difficult for any organization to handle, but they seem to be doing that very well. They've also opened up a new facility that they're using now as a way to establish themselves more concretely in the community. That seems to have gone well, and that had an impact on their fundraising efforts for an endowment that they are aiming toward. They have $1 million endowment that they're aiming toward, which luckily recently they've been able to support with funding from the local foundation. I appreciate that they're looking for different ways to intersect with different parts of the community, and this year they're going to be focusing on the Latino, Latinx population. I really appreciated that. Altogether, I have nothing but good things to say about the organization. I think that they are really a model for how an organization can intersect with the community in multiple ways, very organically developed. They haven't overextended themselves financially over the years, which just seems to be a very healthy and valuable organization in our community on many, many different ways,
Lorena, you are our second reader for this application.
Yeah, at first, I mean, I agree with most of what Alan said, but the first thing I kind of noticed was that the strategic plan that was attached was for 2015 to 2017, and that there's one currently being updated, but there was no strategic plan for 2018, 2019, which I thought was, problematic. Within the budget, there was a huge increase in ad buys from $2,364 to $9,500 without an explanation being offered as to why. Would have been nice to know what that was about. I also thought the language was very, we would like to do this instead of the community has asked for this, especially regarding the Latinx community. I do love that they're running buses for the fourth graders. I don't know about Monroe County, but in Lawrence County, the buses are always the problem when you try to do things, when you try to get kids out of the schools for anything. And I couldn't access the link to the artistic documentation to evaluate that.
Thank you. Any additional comments on this application?
I just say that they do mention having a 6-county outreach, but there's not much information beyond that claim. I'd like to see them, given how important the organization is and what their message is, it's very needed this day and age, in my opinion. I would really like to see their international message of peace and healing through music be extended to the surrounding areas. And I'm also clear that it's hard for a small organization to be everything to everybody, but I just think it's so needed that I would love to see them grow in capacity to serve more areas around Wilmington.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Hearing none, I would ask you to finalize your scores and comments for this application. Okay, we're going to move on to AOS 1. Our first application is Sculpture Trails Outdoor Museum. Jack, you are the first reader on this application.
All right, thank you. I had a few issues with this one. The board is a sizable board. It also has several people on the board that are arts trained. That's to the positive. The narrative describes what they have done over the past years, but I didn't see a strategic plan. It consistently has a consistent budgetary situation over the last several years of increasing dollars, which is to the positive. And then most fixed assets that are described in the financials, those are in the form of sculpture on the premises, and they're valued at $1 million plus. But what I would like to have seen with that description would have been a description of where those estimates of value were done. Were they done by the organization? Were they done by somebody outside the organization, which would have given more credibility to them? In terms of community engagement, the narrative addressed students as a specific target, but it also used the word community as its target. Again, that's probably a bit too vague for the criteria. It would have been better if that could have been broken out into what sort of target groups within the community you're talking about. They did use some two-way planning and evaluation. They described it, but they didn't really flesh it out in the narrative. They placed an emphasis on service to low-income, handicapped, elderly, but they did not describe the nature of input from program users in this section. Arts education. Who benefits from the programs is not spelled out. It's not given emphasis to the narrative, except to say school children. They did, to some extent, describe the underserved in another section, but it would have been better if they could have brought it into this section with some detail. The narrative is sketchy on detail, except in describing program expansion. Planned outcomes are not described here. The narrative doesn't discuss relative training of or experience of the instructors or the quality of the programs. It has to be inferred by the reviewer from the other info presented. It would have been better if they would have actually spelled it out here. Artistic quality. They gave one example of promotional materials. It seemed of some quality, but it's just hard to judge the quality of the whole program based on the evidence that was presented in the application.
Thank you. Rebecca, you are the second reader on this application.
I think notes that I made in relationship to community engagement, they did talk about reaching out to the 5 schools in Greene County. But again, as you had mentioned, Jack, I did not see how they secured input from some of those that I saw would benefit, such as the interns, the students, and the workshop participants and the trail walkers. I think as far as engagement, there was some improvements to the trails and renovations that would help, and also secured a mobile vehicle to be able to reach those with physical limitations. The arts education program, I needed to have more information on instructor training and experiences. That was really missing. But the hands-on art projects I felt were good. And again, the quality, I think that there was some missing information on that. Overall, I stated the educational programs were fantastic in reaching out to the school and the field trips, with it being in a rare rural area.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to the full panel. Any additional comments on this application?
I'm surprised nobody else mentioned their Instagram page. I love their Instagram page. I even started following it. So many cool photos. I mean, in terms of artistic quality, good job, whoever runs the page.
Good.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I agree with pretty much everything that everyone has said thus far, but also just being privy to the word on the street, there is so much hype around this organization. People love it. And I don't feel like their grant application conveyed the potential there, or even what they're already doing, because people absolutely love that place and enjoy their iron and metal pours, aluminum pours. It is a fantastically amazing visual experience if you get to go. So I would really suggest they get some help with their grant writing on this, just to convey better and to secure better funding for themselves.
And just to that end, perhaps what will help them in that direction is diversifying their board. It seems that their board has been around for a while. They pretty much know each other, they know what they're doing things excellently. But I think we've spoken already about on this panel about how representation from the community on boards is critical to the health and well-being of an organization. Perhaps that's a way for them to address those issues by telling their story and connecting with the community in a different way. So.
Great discussion, thank you very much. Hearing if there are no additional comments, I would ask you to finalize your scores and comments for this application. Our next application is Windfall Dancers, and Jamie, you are the first reader for this application.
Okay. Windfall's just an amazing asset to our community, in my opinion. It's been around for a long time and provides the opportunity for anyone and everyone to feel comfortable performing and dancing. And so I highly commend them for that mission that they have. There's a few things about the application itself that was not real clear to me when I was reading it. And also I felt like that with only 6 board meetings a year, I know it's a small organization, but they mention wanting to have innovative ideas and new directions to go. And I wonder if there's just very active committees or how that's going to happen unless they maybe meet more often and engage with ideas, brainstorming, I guess. Yeah, it says providing innovative community outreach, that's part of the mission, so I'm just curious. I think one of the positives is that they have their own space after many years, and that venue space is being used by many organizations and individuals. So 7 days a week, their space is being utilized, and I think that's good. They mentioned strategic planning, but they didn't have to. It wasn't required to submit a strategic plan, but since it's mentioned, I thought maybe that would be a good thing to work on and to see when they submit their application. It's not required for this level of grant. Also, I noticed that they had budgeted $2,000 for fundraising, and the actual last year was 0, and I just was left with a question on how they're going to do that, if there's new events or fundraising opportunities that have come up. Community engagement, again, having their studio available is great. Also wondering a little bit about low-income participation outside of school performances, if those are available. I guess what I'm saying is that I'm sure this is all present within the organization, but the grant application maybe just left me with a lot of questions. So I'd like to see a few more specifics in the next grant application. They do have opportunities for specific demographics like Parkinson's and life skills participants at Bloomington High School South. So those are really good outreach opportunities. But I would like to know more about how they can work with underserved populations. Arts education, I know this is a real strength for Windfall. They offer dance and creative movement opportunities to many people who would otherwise not participate in dance. And I just have to say that that's a wonderful opportunity. Their after-school programs do reach underserved youth, so that was a specific that I thought was important. And they do have specific programming for those with disabilities. I'm wondering if there's scholarships available. That wasn't mentioned. So as far as artistic quality goes, Windfall's a valuable asset to Bloomington Arts scene. Future grant opportunities, I think it would be helpful to have a little more detail in regards to programming, performances, dance troupe participants, and the staffing. Some of the info provided was a little vague. What I was looking at was what's new this year, what are goals for the future, and how has Windfall grown and changed over the years, and how is it reaching a new and diverse audience. So I just commend them on what they do. It was a strong application. I just was left with a few more questions that I hope to have at the end of it.
Thank you. Jack, you are the second reader on this one.
Yes, I also found it a strong application. In terms of organizational excellence, I had no qualms about giving top marks there. I did have some questions in the community engagement, and I'll try to find them here. General targets for engagement, for community engagement, general targets in their programming, a general statement of groups wanted, could have had more specificity there. Wants to increase demographic mix, but didn't identify how it would go about that. Seeking programming input, but again, most of it is after the fact. Some active discussions, but again, the after the fact stands out. There was some brainstorming, so that was a positive. Arts education, I think once again I just gave top marks in their arts education. And artistic quality, and one or two items that I would like to add more information. Underserved commitment. Some underserved groups identified, but how they're going to implement serving them by way of lower ticket prices and that sort of thing, physical barriers. They're being improved, but there was some detail lacking there. I felt that was necessary. And a plus is that their narrative is oriented toward the arts and less on administration. That's a plus, I believe, in terms of criteria. Promo materials quality. Yeah, that's all my comment.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the full panel for any additional comments.
I would commend their working with the scouting programs and developing patches, because from my own experience, we tried to do that at the museum and never did quite get that worked out with scouting, so that's kudos to them. So that's also a good way to get to underserved populations is through the scouting programs.
Okay. If there are no other comments, I would ask you to finalize your scores for this application. Okay, our next application is Shawnee Theater of Greene County. Rowena, you are the first reader on this application.
Well, Shawnee Theater is just an incredible resource, both in Greene County and the surrounding areas, and it's been there a really, really long time, almost as long as I've been alive, which is a really, really long time. They get a whole lot done on what is really a small budget, and so in organizational excellence, I give them kudos. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for a long time, as I just said. I love the way that they expressed embracing older patrons and accommodating the needs of those older patrons at the same time as they look for a younger audience. I didn't really see from their lineup any programming aimed at a younger audience specifically, or any indication that younger audiences had expressed an interest in a particular kind of programming. So it seems like that could be an area to work on. I mean, that was a theme in a lot of these proposals, was this desire for that elusive younger audience, you know, without really knowing who that younger audience might be. Their arts education mostly revolved around interacting with professionals through participation in the plays, which is great. But there were no real planned outcomes, you know. I don't think anybody sat down and said, these are the things we want to accomplish with these. That said, I said you'd be hard pressed to find a better education in theater within a 100-mile radius, with all due respect to my friends from Little Theater Bedford, which is also wonderful. But I don't get a rating back, so. Shawty's a wonderful resource. High marks on artistic quality. And this time I did not make any observations at all on their social media. Maybe somebody else will do that. But yeah, in general, very strong proposal.
Glenn, you were second reader?
I don't have much more to add except that just a general comment about a legacy organization doing as much as they've done in their community for as long as they've done it. There are a lot of changes happening in the field of the arts and in the field of theater in particular, and I would urge them to connect with other progressive theater organizations around the state, perhaps even ones here in Bloomington, just to get a sense of how those organizations are adapting and responding to community needs, so that they don't get too stuck in their ways. The other thing is, I noticed that the board and administration tends to be one and the same, and it would be a good idea for them as they continue to sustain themselves to try and separate that out a little bit more. But you're absolutely right, it's a pretty phenomenal organization doing extraordinary work in that community. I was struck by, in their budget, how much money they spend, their expenses on their fundraising efforts. It's a large proportion of that, $20,000 on fundraising, and I was wondering if that is necessary. I don't specifically know what it is that they spend that money on, but that just struck me as an element within the budget. But I agree with you, it's a pretty spectacular organization and has been around for quite some time.
Thank you. Any other comments on this application?
I think the only difficulty I had was on the educational component for youth, and I found that by going to their website, there was a much clearer picture of what they did in serving the youth.
I'd just like to say that I was a little unclear on some of the budgetary things. They had an increase in ticket sales anticipated for this year, but I didn't really understand, how that was going to happen or what they had planned to make that happen. So just one of the things that stood out to me.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other comments, I'll ask you to finalize your comments and scores for this application. Our next application is Bloomington Chamber Singers, and Rebecca, you are the first reader for this application.
Okay, in reviewing the grant and doing the organizational excellence, I noticed that they have very active, involved board members in the choir, as well as strengthening community engagements through their board. I don't see a note I have on it. Let's see. They have plans to reach families and young children by cooperating with various singing groups and teachers in schools. The community input and recognition, they recognize the lower attendance in specific concerts, allowed the group, they picked up on that and allowed the group to adjust and look at more diverse musical offerings. So the current plans include reaching out to the underserved school children, and hopefully, if successful, they will expand that. So I think that they're trying to reach out and engaging more in the community. The plans include pre-concert lectures, providing educational component in the schools that would also include lunchtime madrigal concerts. I think connecting to high school students and elementary schools, learning what's taught in schools, which will help them in providing context of ways that the classical chorus music can incorporate that in the programs, outreach that they do. That's all I have, so
Okay.
maybe
Jamie
can add to that.
I agree with most of what Rebecca said, so I may not have as much to add. I thought the fact that they adjusted their programming from the feedback they received was probably a pretty good thing and admirable. One of the things I noticed was, and it's not just this this application, but oftentimes groups that are wanting to serve underserved youth are reaching out to Templeton and Fairview, and I'm just wondering about, there's low-income kids in all schools, so if somehow MCCSC in general can be worked with so that more schools can benefit from working with smaller organizations, I think that would be great. And again, I know it's hard for a small organization to do more than they're able, but I just think about all the kids across the board that could benefit from this. It seems like their educational efforts are mostly through these pre-concert talks and lectures, which I think is interesting to preface what you're about to see and people go in understanding a little bit more instead of having questions at the end of it. Or they'll still have questions at the end of it, but that's a nice touch to educate your audience beforehand. I thought it was a strong application and that they're doing really good work. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to add. And they do a good job of partnering with other organizations and entities. I thought that was important. So I think that's probably all I have to add in addition to what Rebecca just said.
So I'll open it up to the full panel for any additional comments on this application.
Well, I noticed that the board is drawn from their singers completely, like 100%, and there wasn't any plan to change that and make it more representative of the people actually served by the group. It seems to me that it would make sense to bring in some representatives from the audience.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt about it too. I think that a membership organization can fall into the trap of becoming a little insular as an artistic entity, and I know that they're constantly trying to work ways to intersect with the community, but perhaps by mixing up their organization internally, they would enable themselves to do so more. So I want to just support that.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, please finalize your scores and comments in the online system. Our next application is Bloomington Creative Glass, and Lan, you are the first reader.
Great. Bloomington Community Glass Guild, AOS Level 1, started in 2012, led by Abby Gidlitz, and doing a pretty extraordinary job at building themselves as an organization in Bloomington. They've had some serious growth since really all the way through the last 4 or 5 years. They're very committed to embracing community diversity. They have an apprentice program. They have lots of volunteers. They intersect with Ivy Tech, lifelong learning partnership, and then schools, library, MCCSC, Brown County schools. They really are a model organization in how they've been able to intersect with different parts of this community over a very short period of time. I do worry that with such a motivated and inspiring leader, how the organization would exist without her. And so that's just something to watch out for. And it's nothing serious at this point because the organization is young and evolving, but I'm just very, very impressed with what they're doing. They have a good board that's forming around them. They're connecting with influential people, and they have a good mix on their board of representation, good cross-section of individuals in town. I feel that the board could be perhaps a little larger as they grow. They've got some good financial growth over a period of 3 years. They've gone from 44,000 to 100,000, so that's pretty substantial. They're even increasing their income beyond what they expected, and they have this sort of signature event every year in the community, the Great Glass Pumpkin Patch, which really draws in more and more people to what they're doing. So altogether, I just think they're doing very well.
Let's see, Rowena, you are on the second reading on this application.
Yeah, I was really glad to get to read this one because I did not know this organization, and it just sounds really cool. I was struck by, in addition to everything that Alex discussed, the apprentice program being particularly interesting. It requires a commitment from the students, and then they get free classes. So it makes this education accessible to somebody who really has nothing to spend for it. Pretty great. I was a little worried about their 2019 budgeted income. It wasn't going to be enough to cover budgeted expenses. And they haven't gone through a whole year in the new facilities, so, there may be some sticker shock coming there. We don't know. I really like that they had student board members. It's a great way to develop capacity for the future. In terms of community engagement, it isn't clear how they chose targeted groups, the groups that were targeted and not some other groups, but they do seem to be working hard to accommodate those groups. Another comment on the apprenticeship program and the qualifications of the instructors, really, really highly qualified. Trouble, was this just me? Trouble with the website link? Couldn't get to the website. Is that just, did anybody else have that issue? No, you did? Okay. And once I did finally get to the website through a different way, it wasn't completely up to date. So if you're going to attach a website to a grants proposal, you should probably make sure that your schedule's up to date and all of that. I had more luck with the Facebook page, which seems to be actually helping. But all in all, just a really interesting organization that's a real asset to the community.
Now I'll open it to the full panel. Any additional comments on this application?
I just have a suggestion, coming from a senior background. They have been reaching out to senior living centers. I'd suggest that they might want to contact the Area 10 Agency and Enright Center.
And I would second that. Yeah, they do mention that they would like to reach an elder audience, but they didn't really so much elaborate on how they're going to do that. So yes, I agree that would be a great resource for them. And also, I am so happy for them that their organization has come so far and is growing. I think it's growing really fast, and that they may benefit. I'm going to sound like I'm a harp on strategic plans, even though it's not required for this application. I just think it can help really rein in ideas and also clarify them for their organization so they can maintain this increase in growth and not have a problem with their budget. So that's just one of the things I thought that might be helpful for them. And yeah, the web link was broken when I tried to access it.
Thank you. If there are no further comments, please finalize those comments and your scores in the online system. Our next application is Little Theater, and Jeff, you are the first reader on that.
All right, thank you. Little Theater, Bedford, Indiana. When I first opened this, I saw a two-member board on the download, and that bothered me. So I went back into the application packet and gave it a better look, strong. And it is a 9-member board. It just somehow was garbled or just downloaded wrong. But a 9-member board, and the board is, as it turns out, is a wide range of vocations and interests, all good to a board. I noticed that the financials, the yearly operating incomes varied quite a lot over the last 3 years. But the current year, they were proposing a slightly higher income than the 3-year past average, and that looked good. Financials, again, they've been in operation since 1960. They've been operating continuously, apparently, and so they're showing some fiscal responsibility through the years. And they presented all the P&Ls, income and expense forms that they're asked to do, and over the last 3 years, they've shown a profit, a small profit each year since 2015. As a negative here, I didn't see a strategic plan. The narrative tells what committees the board members are on, what they're responsible for, but again, no strategic plan for the future there. In terms of the community engagement, a little mixed. They engage the community after the programs are completed. Again, no narrative that discusses engagement in the initial planning events. Again, it's after the fact. They showed fair access and inclusion emphasized in their narrative. In arts education, a bit of a mix. Programs and target groups are described, but the outcomes, what to expect, are not described in this narrative. The credentials of those delivering the programs are not discussed, although one reads quality into the narrative, but in terms of the actual specifics, they didn't deliver those credentials. And it's hard to determine, again, in the narrative, whether a quality of arts education is being offered. By implication and reading around it in other parts of the narrative, it appears that it is. Again, in artistic quality, another bit of a mix, but the narrative emphasized meaningful experiences to a wide range of target groups, with emphasis on underserved and handicapped. The promotional materials showed reasonable quality, I thought, so ultimately good. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Elaine, you are a second reader on this.
Yeah, I don't really have anything further. That's a very comprehensive overview. That's good.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the panel on this application?
I thought the promotional materials were really charming. Actually, I'm professional. This is a group that has a strong youth focus, young adult focus, and I thought the selection of plays was really appropriate for an audience that is all ages.
Yes, and I would agree. I think that a really impressive amount of effort goes into community engagement and accessibility. I thought the low stimulation dress rehearsal performance for young adults with disabilities was a really innovative and nice thing for them to offer.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, please finalize your comments and scores. Okay, our next application is Cornland Men's Chorus, and Jamie, you are the first reader for this.
Okay, this is a really well articulated and organized application. I thought that their scope of national affiliation involvement was really impressive. They have a lot of outreach, and they've created a good support system for their organization. They say community engagement is an area that they're working to improve, and I can see that through this gala, organization. It's a national organization. They're working with, they're implementing a lot of tools that that organization provides. So I guess my point is that they have a goal and they're just telling us how they're going to reach that. I think the discussion groups will be an interesting area to improve their community engagement. They mentioned having discussion groups. And their arts education is really for its own membership. So increasing some economic diversity among its membership, I think, is important as an organization that's getting state grant money. It would be nice to see a little bit of economic diversity to come on board. Artistic quality seems to be excellent. All in all, I just thought it was a very, very good presentation and application.
Thank you. Rebecca, your second reader?
Yes. I thought too, with the connection with the national organization, that has made a difference in doing the education components and reaching out. I think there is excellent opportunities for participants to gain skills and improve skills utilizing what they have learned. I noted and I also noted that there were opportunities available for offstage training as well. So I thought it was a well-written grant.
Thank you. Any additional comments on this application?
Great promotional materials. I'm really sorry I missed historically speaking. That looked like it was a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you. If there are no other comments, I would ask you to finalize those comments and your scores in the online system. Our next application is Stages Bloomington, and Rowena, you are the first reader for this application.
I did not know this organization before reading this proposal. So what you're getting are my absolutely unadulterated comments based on the proposal itself. The board did not appear to be very diverse, although as you know, it's hard to tell. I observed that they didn't have any financial cushion to get them through a bad year. Hopefully they'll never have a bad year. Like their community engagement, the year-round engagement is a big plus. And like that they work with school choirs, and just observed it's a good strategy to include testimonials from people who've been served in the community. It looks like a missed opportunity to me to have only one person select the plays. They've got all those teenage artists in residence. You know, why not ask them or ask the teachers, sort of cast your net a little more widely. I like the emphasis on civility. The outreach to the Black community that's discussed, it seems to me, would have been better before the play was selected, to get input on actually selecting the play. Arts education, I gave them really high marks. The scholarships definitely increase accessibility. I thought their video showed really exceptional musical quality. The website wasn't up to date. Again, it was nothing about summer 2019. So year-round programming, but you can't find out, you know, what's happening in the next couple of months. And the promotional materials really didn't show much diversity, but this is Southern Indiana, and, you know, we'll just take that into account. That's all.
Jack, you are second reader on this application.
Yes, I found this to be a very, very strong application. The only place that I really took any umbrage was the arts education. Let me just get down to it. Just the quality, marks there. Sorry, let me find it here. Today. Yes, in terms of arts education, I would like to have seen credentials. The activities they are provided by, quote, professional artists, but they don't really give the credentials of those professional artists. It would have been helpful if those had been put in. But otherwise, the narrative implies high artistic quality and education and its educational program. Very strong application, I thought.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments on this application? Okay, well, hearing none, please finalize your comments and your scores in the online system. And our next application is the Bloomington Symphony Orchestra. Ellen, you are the first reader for this application.
Thanks very much. I seem to have been blessed with presenting three very, very strong proposals today. Bloomington Symphony Orchestra included in them, an organization that likes to call itself of the people and by the people of Bloomington. Been around for a long time, since 1969, so it's really one of these sort of anchor arts organizations in the community, which over the past while seems to have gone through quite substantial changes in all areas of its activities, including strengthening the organization, diversifying the board, looking at its programming, developing more meaningful community partnerships, thinking of itself as an asset to the community in addition to service to the members of the orchestra who perform and love performing in the orchestra. And so their proposal reveals a lot of what they've been doing over the last few years, which for me personally in the world of classical music is very exciting to see. They have a surprisingly small budget for an organization that does as much as they do, and that's partly as a result of the fact that their executive director is willing to work for not very much as a sort of a volunteer, and that's something that I would worry about just going forward in terms of sustainability, how they manage themselves going forward, and not necessarily relying on somebody's goodwill. They've become seriously committed to connecting with a larger, more diverse community over the past few years, partnering with lots of different community organizations. We spoke about board diversity earlier on. They've decided to really bring in members of the community to their board and not just rely on the members of the orchestra. And they're surveying and communicating and consulting as much as they possibly can as they explore what they're doing. They've also connected with the Arts Administration program at Indiana University and had them come in and help with ideas. And recently started this project called CHIRP, which is the Children's Instrument Recovery Program, which again diversifies their activities as an organization and connects with the community in different ways. So altogether, I think they're doing a really great job. Got a great website, good materials, and just, over the past few years seem to have really evolved as a progressive, innovative, connected organization to the community.
Okay, thank you. Rowena, you are the second reader.
Yeah, I agree completely. Wonderful to have the kids who receive the instruments actually play with the orchestra.
Side by side.
Side by side. Meet the Instruments sounded like a really great program, just like the side-by-side concerts. And I have to say, let me go back to where I actually said it. The video, actually, I found moving. These people of all different ages and all different ethnicities playing music together, very professional promotional materials. You really, really rooting for them to succeed. The tickets are reasonably priced. And I've just concluded, I can't think of a single thing not to like about this proposal. Excellent.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the panelists on this application?
The only thing that I was wondering is if there are additional ways for community input rather than the post-concert surveys, perhaps some ways of reaching people that are not at the concerts. It seems to be a way that most organizations cover this base, as they say they put out a survey at the end of their concert or their workshop or whatever. And sometimes I think that should be expanded into ways of reaching an audience that's not actually there. But I love their instrument petting zoo. I thought that was just the best, and what a great way for kids to come in and actually get to feel it, touch it, and play it, and then they're going to fall in love with something. So that's wonderful. It was a very, very, very strong application.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, I would ask you to finalize your scores and comments in the online system. And as this is the final application in this round, this concludes this panel meeting for the FY20 grant round. Thank you, audience, for coming and sitting in. We appreciate your time and investment. And I'm going to ask the panelists to sit tight for a few minutes, if you don't want to.